Regular City Council meeting on March 26, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the roll call show that everyone is present.
Except for the interim.
Oh, right. Chief Collins is absent this evening. We'll move forward to the approval of the minutes, March 12, 2018.
I'll move the minutes.
Excuse me, I needed a drink. I have something on page 17. Toward the bottom it says, Councilmember Kibble asked, you should insert Councilmember Kurtzwil before she has had. Okay. The whole sentence is Councilmember Kibble asked Councilmember Kurtzwil if she had had the training on the Age Discrimination Act of 1967. That's all I had. Thank you. I'll second that motion as amended. Oh, I'm sorry. You got to make the motion.
I'll make the motion as amended, to move the minutes as amended.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We have no bills this evening, so we'll move to the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Will.
I provided through the clerk's office 2 additional items. One is the budget consultant engagement letter, and the other is a memorandum of understanding with the POAM. Those would be added as new business 7 and 8.
Okay.
I move the agenda as amended.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, I got a motion for the agenda. Mr. Mayor, may I?
Go ahead, Carl.
Okay. I would like to add something under new business, tonight's meeting. You can do it number 1. Be short and sweet. It would require council approval, and it has to do with tree trimming, okay? Since we don't have a city manager here, it would take council approval to do this. It'd be short and sweet. Thank you very much. We take a
How
vote
about
on
you
it.
just do that on your council comments?
No, this ain't. I want to vote. I want an action vote on this.
Well, then you're going to need a supermajority to be able to get that.
Okay, then can we? Okay, I'll motion to have a supermajority for the approval of a new item for new business regarding tree trimming. Okay, and I'll explain it all at that time.
Tim, does that need a second?
So, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
I believe you have a motion and a second prior to Councilmember Richards' request.
Right.
So you have a motion on the table that's been seconded,
It needs to be voted on.
or you can make a motion to amend the original motion. But somebody's got to make that motion to
Right.
amend.
Somebody's got to make the motion.
I'll go ahead to amend the motion to include item number 9, a discussion and action item regarding tree trimming. Is there a second on the amendment?
I'll second the amendment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. I also vote no.
Motion failed. 4-3. 3-4.
Now, do we need to get a motion to approve the original amended agenda?
Yes, the motion to amend has failed, so you now are back to your original motion,
Okay.
which was to amend the agenda regarding items 7 and 8. That motion is still on the floor. And you have a second on it.
So we'll put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
Motion passes. At this point in time, if anyone would like to speak for public comment, please come on up, state your name and address. With no one showing interest in public comment tonight, we will move on to number 1. We have some presentations this evening in recognition of Ashley Parr for Young Entrepreneur contest winner over at the Lemon Tree. So I'm going to come around and speak at the public microphone.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
Her name's Paige.
Thank you.
It
I got
is?
a late-
Oh,
I
okay,
got a
all of
late
our
adjustment
documents are
on
We
wrong.
do need to
Okay.
have that corrected because it's incorrect on
Okay.
the agenda and the agenda note.
How do you spell it? Oh.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to welcome down Ashley Parr. She is a 12-year-old sixth grader at Centennial Middle School. And we'd like to welcome her parents as well, Jamie and Chad Parr, and Annie Bertrip, owner of the Lemon Tree. Everyone come on down. Congratulations. How much fun. All right, so let me go ahead and be careful carrying that around. It looks like it might slide out on the side.
Could we see it? Oops.
Very cool. Oh, that's beautiful. That's awesome.
So Ashley is the winner of the Young Entrepreneur Contest by the Lemon Tree in downtown South Lyon.
Congratulations.
We are going to honor her with this certificate of recognition, and we'd like to take a quick photo op. If maybe the flags may be the best. I know that's kind of tucked away in the back there.
I'm coming.
This right here.
Do you guys have a camera too that you want to have?
I don't know if it's too dark back here. Hopefully not.
No, I'll go in.
Is it just you two first?
Oh no, we can do everybody. Absolutely.
I'm with you too. I want to stand right here.
That one this way too.
Another camera.
Yep.
Let me just do one more.
Yes, I do.
I just got to do his best work. Smile. Perfect. Good job. Okay. All right.
And then we got one more plaque to hand out.
Congratulations, Ashley. That's awesome.
Just really quickly, it was Annie's idea to create the Youth Entrepreneur Contest, and It has had a very positive personality, and she's always promoting downtown and her fellow businesses and in the community in general. And so we'd like to recognize you as well, and hopefully we'll be seeing you later on the agenda as well.
Good timing.
Yes. Very much, everybody. With that, we'll move on to old business number 1 of the downtown discussion. And now, Mr. Donahue is not here tonight, but I didn't know if anyone else had anything they wanted to speak of. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to exercise my right to free speech, contrary to what Mr. Donahue thinks we should be doing, regarding the downtown, and express my concern about the corner that closed, the Draft House. That how it stayed open, I'll never know. I was in there this summer, and when it came time to serve, I was given plastic silverware because the hot water was not working. So it was difficult for me to believe that if you didn't have hot water to wash your silverware, how you had hot water to wash plates or do any of the cooking of the stuff in the back. So it appears to be closed, and hopefully we can get a responsible restaurateur or whatever business is being planned for that corner. I just don't think that the residents of South Lyon should have to pay the price for a restaurant that comes into town and runs it under the conditions that the Draft House was, at least from what I personally observed. So that's my comment tonight on the downtown.
I think it was, is it Draft Street? I just want to make sure we're getting
Draft
this right.
Street,
Okay.
whatever.
Nope, I trust me, I understand what you're saying. So I just wanted to make sure we got the name right, so.
Well, I was also in there, by the way, and watched a family of ants have their family picnic on a French fry, and just thought, well, I think it's time that I exit stage right out of this place, so.
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
I agree with Councilmember Kurtzweil. Some of the things I observed were unspeakable. And plus, when they had the Grapevine Market, there's a 16-year-old kid behind the counter selling alcohol. And I'd ask the kid, how old are you? You know, and he says, I'm old enough, buddy, you know. Anyway, same old story with that place going on decade after decade. Anyway, on a good note, the work is beautifully being done on the row buildings uptown. The 3 buildings next to the Bonner building, and next between that and Danny Barrett's building, the State Farm building, okay? The contractor is CHI, or HCI, I guess, okay, and the same fellow, Holden is his name, Walt Holden, the fellow who did most of the work on the hotel. And I've talked to him, okay, and they're going to be there for 2 or 3 weeks. It's a massive undertaking, and it's going to be remodeled very, very nicely on the it's all on the outside. I don't think they're working on the inside at all. Anyway, that's good news, you know. I like to talk about good things.
That's great.
Well, just to clarify, they are doing the inside. They've reattended. There was a suspended ceiling in there, and so that with the height of those windows, they had to modify that. So they are doing interior work as well.
Did anyone else have anything for downtown discussion this week?
No, thanks.
Okay. We will move on to old business number 2. Consider first reading of liquor license ordinance. Now, the recommendation in the packet is to deny the reading of the 3/21/18 version and approve first reading of the 1/22/18 version of the liquor license ordinance. Does that sound right, Tim?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. So I want to do a little bit of an overview to give some additional explanation as to why that recommendation is in there. There is a little bit of history here. There is no ordinance, and basically the city's been doing an ad hoc process with respect to liquor licensing. So I want you to keep that in mind. This ordinance is designed to comply with state law and formalize through an ordinance the initial application process, the procedures, the decision-making, and then deal with some of the after approval type issues, transfers, objections. If you had a problem, you would then have the ability to object or request a revocation of a license. So the recommendation to go and use to the earlier January 22 draft is largely based on my role as a city attorney. I am encouraging you to maintain and keep in your ordinance tools that provide you with an ability to receive notice and make decisions on changes or new applications for liquor licenses in your community. You do always, regardless of whether you include these tools in your ordinance, there is a less formal process through the MLCC which the city can provide comments or object to, for example, a license transfer. But the trend has been for the state to try and exclude local government roles and favor the business. And I don't have a dog in the fight. You as a council are going to decide how much control you want to place on this process and what your role is going to be. You've been provided with 3 different versions at least, and we've gone through and dealt with some of the issues in detail outside of this group. I just worry that the 321 draft puts the city in a position where you're relying very heavily on the state to do work related to your local licensing and your liquor establishments. And to the extent that the state doesn't do what you like, you're not going to have many tools left where they're going to take your words and your position and really do anything with it. So these are largely, there's some distinction between new applications. For example, the plan of operation in that 321 draft has been removed. And then there are some after licenses that are issued changes which apply to the substantial changes and the transfers. So the big change on the transfers is to limit it only to location. So if there were a change in ownership, you're not going to get, your ordinance in the 321 draft would not have any process that liquor license holder would have to go through to transfer ownership or sell it or anything like that. If they move the location of it within your city, out of the city, and I think there's less concern if somebody's bringing it into your community, but you're still going to go through that process of evaluating them like you would a new license applicant. And really, I also want to emphasize that the process provides you with notice and an opportunity to review these. The decision can be to approve or deny. It's not an automatic denial, and I want to make that clear. And again, this is to be compared against, South Lyon has always done an ad hoc process where these have not been formalized. You have not received notice of certain things. And the question is, if you wanted notice of these, the tools that are in the earlier draft are there to provide you with that notice and an ability to evaluate them and say yes or no. There are questions if you say no, for example, a license transfer, if you say no, I think there are things that an owner can do under the Liquor License Act or the Liquor Control Act, such as escrow a license. That may be a response. If you deny the request to transfer to a new owner or to a new location, they may say, well, I can't make a go of it here. I'm going to escrow my license and you're going to lose it, so to speak, anyway. But it would remain a quota license that is still allocated to your community, and you have an example of that in your community right now. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer these. And
Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
Okay, the plan of operations, if that is put back into the language of the ordinance, can that be considered contractual, where we can sue in the event that they violate the plan of operations or don't fulfill what they've said that they planned on doing with the plan of operations?
I wouldn't characterize it as contractual. What I would say is it's a lot of what the owner intends to do is still included in the 321 draft. They need to tell you how much food, how much liquor, how much space, kind of things. You're going to want to know that. Whether it means much to you is a different thing. But the plan of operation is a way to force the owner and applicant to formalize this into a plan and say, this is my business plan to use this license and make a profit for myself in your community. And what that does is that is a representation and a document that you could go back to in the event that there's a deviation from it or a violation and pursue ordinance violations for noncompliance with that plan. In other words, they would make a representation to the city saying, this is what I plan to do, and you have a document that you can go to and say, you told us in writing this is what you were going to do, you're not doing that. That's under that previous draft, it's an ordinance violation, and you would have an ability to pursue that. So I wouldn't characterize it as contractual, but more setting up an ordinance provision where you could enforce that.
So it would simply be an ordinance violation then,
Yes.
in the event that they weren't compliant? Okay.
And it could lead to you objecting to a renewal. This owner, I'm not exactly sure how all of this rolls out, but you have the right. Annually, they renew these things through the MLCC. The city always has the ability to object to a renewal when that renewal comes up. You could say, these folks are, they deviate, they're not in compliance with our zoning or our code, they're violating this that they told us they would do. I'm not exactly sure how the MLCC evaluates that, but that's something that you could use in addition to ordinance enforcement. That's another option that the city would have to enforce. And that option for objecting to renewal would remain in place regardless of whether the plan of operation is in place in your ordinance. Again, the plan of operation is really a document that is easily identified and pointed to and collects the plan for the operation of a new applicant.
Well, I see a benefit and a downside to that. The benefit would obviously be by recognizing that they've deviated from what their suggested plan of operation would be, would at least give us the opportunity to have conversation with them to find out if that was their intent or if it was just something that had kind of gone relatively unnoticed by them. Or we could make suggestions of how we think that they might end up being in a better position. But the downside will be that we'll have to be monitoring that to be able to recognize that there's some deviation from, their operational plan. So, I mean, that seems almost happenstantial, unless they were to come forward and give us notice that they intended to stray from the original plan. It's going to be very difficult for us to identify that, I think.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, so the plan of operation and the substantial change tend to work together. So you have the requirement, if you make a substantial change away from what's in the plan of operation, that would provide a mechanism for enforcement. The notice procedure, yes, and I do want to also inform the council of this. I tend to approach this from looking at scenarios where they're worst case scenarios. If you have a recalcitrant owner who is engaging in business practices that are a nuisance and a problem for you, these are tools that can help you address that. Without them, I worry that you don't have the necessary tools. You still have tools. You can always pursue a nuisance. There's zoning, there's other issues. These are tools designed to help you with these particular types of establishments. And I would clarify, that's because you're already in the process. This is a state process. They require and seek out, in some cases, local government approval, particularly for new applications. There is some concern about the city's local governmental role after that for changes, transfers, and that thing. That trend has been to cut the local government out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to point out that the 122 draft restricts all of that plan of operation and compliance with it for a 3-year period, which is designed to try and match up with the state in MCL 436-1501 sub 2 states that Class C and SDD licenses will not be transferred for 3 years after issuance. So there are other on-premises licenses that are wrapped up in that, but the state is saying only those 2 categories we restrict transfers for 3 years. So again, these are policy type questions. I think you've been presented with a number of options. I'm certainly willing to do whatever the council decides it wants to do.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Councilmember Richards.
Tim, can we mandate as a council that the actual original liquor license has to be posted in plain view and not hid off in an office somewhere in the establishment, let us say, on a wall? Can we mandate that? I've gone into a number of bars in this town over the years, and I've asked them, you got any idea who owns the liquor license in here? And they said, I haven't the slightest idea. Where is it? Is it on the wall somewhere? And they said, no, I've never seen it. And that's what you have in this town. I don't know if this council has the power or authority to require that the actual liquor license be posted on the wall in plain sight.
Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, Councilman Richards, it's pretty easy to find out who owns a liquor license and what the address for the licensed establishment is. There's a state website. We can find that out very quickly. That being said, I don't recall off the top of my head whether there is a requirement under the Liquor Control Act to display the license in any. I think there is one to display it. I'm not sure it deals with location. If this is something council wants to do, we could certainly add that. I think that is not an unreasonable request. I guess you get into the details of where would you want it displayed and make that a requirement. But nonetheless, I think the whole idea of understanding who owns the license for a particular address is easily determined through the state's website.
Anybody that we've got, anybody that we've got with, a role of compliance, they're going to know whether or not their license is valid anyway, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, we often do liquor inspections at establishments that do have these licenses. It's been my experience that just about all the time they have to be displayed on the wall someplace. One of the first things we check for is where is it? Is it displayed, and is it compliant? Is it expired? So it's one of the first things when we do the liquor establishment checks it's displayed on the wall. We usually never have any issues locating it. And they know us at this time when we come in and do liquor inspections, they just kind of point or they just show us exactly where it's at. So it hasn't been an issue with us in the past as far as liquor checks with the establishment here in the city.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything else?
Well, I personally, I suppose, I think that we'd be prudent to take the recommendation of Mr. Wilhelm and revert back to the, 122?
Correct.
122.18 language, just for the additional sense of protection and ability to respond in the event that there's some kind of a mishap. So with that, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
No.
Lisa, would you mind doing a roll call for that, please?
You call me?
Yes. We're doing roll call.
I said yes.
Walton? No. Kurzweil?
No.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Frizia?
No.
Kibble?
Yes.
Mayor Pelcha?
Yes.
Could I ask, what's your misgiving?
Sure. So I believe it was at that particular meeting on January 22nd. Is that the one that you're referring to that we're reverting back to? We had a few business owners come in and express their concerns with the ordinance. And when I was reading through it, my understanding was we were going to try to tailor this to mirror state law as closely as possible. And I understand that we're trying to keep the city's best interests at heart and to protect the city the best that we can. But on the other side, we also need to look at our business owners and ask ourselves some of the provisions in here, such as, for instance, having them come back to the city and say if they're going to be changing their plans, if they're planning on remodeling or planning on changing their game plan. I expressed this at the January 22nd meeting as well. I don't feel comfortable with that. I just feel as though I don't own a business. So for a business owner to come to me and say, hey, I'd like to change my business, I'm in no place to say, yes, you can or no, you cannot. I understand that our seat on council, we're here to make executive decisions, but that's not something that I entirely feel comfortable with having in the ordinance. And that's my misgivings. And if we're reverting back to the ordinance from January 22nd, that's where we had the most concern from, I think it was at least 3 or 4 individuals from our community come forward and speak to that. So that's my misgivings with it. It's not that it's not well written. It's not that it's not complying with state law, because it is. It's just the additional protections that I think that are going to be restricting our business owners, where I like the laissez-faire, let's let them do their business. They've been successful thus far. I don't want to inhibit them. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, point of parliamentary procedure. Once the vote's been taken, the debate is completed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to old business number 3.
I want to talk to you further.
Consider approval of the GFL contract.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Willem.
So we have Sam Caramagno with us today from GFL, and we have had some back and forth since the last time council addressed this. There is language changes to pages 3 and 4 of the revised draft. And basically, this provides the 2,000 carts as part of the first 4-year extension. Anybody that has a cart currently gets the opportunity to request one. And then there's some additional language if it's extended and renewed. So there's an option for an additional 4-year extension. Then the issue of the number and cost of recycling carts would be subject to negotiation. So I see no reason why this can't be approved. I think it addresses the concerns raised by council. The one thing I did talk with Mr. Carmano about was page 3, 2.1.8, the second paragraph reads, the contractor will service homes with recycling carts or bins as part of the regular collection route without additional cost to the city or resident. I think we need to add except as provided for herein to make sure that we're not conflicting. If there's more than 2,000 residents that receive carts, residents may be charged for the use of those carts until, if and when the city decides it wants to extend the contract, then that may open up the opportunity for additional recycling carts. Are there any questions? And Mr. Caramagno is here.
Well, have you determined how many carts there are out there right now?
No, we're in our system was merged with Duncan, or Duncan system was merged with ours. We really don't have a good solid count there other than the sample that we took. We just don't have that information.
Well, I mean, you guys bill them monthly, so how is that not something you can
well,
glean?
I guess what I have is there are probably more carts out there than actually getting billed. Okay, because through the years there's a lot of carts, there's a lot of advanced carts or not advanced, but
Like
allied carts and others out there. So there's a lot of carts out right now that people are using and accustomed to using. And again, it was a mixture of systems. We really don't have a good number on that.
Well, I guess my concern then is we're looking for 2,000 users of free carts.
Right.
So you need to determine how many people you're billing so we can take that off the top of that 2,000 to fulfill the contract. That was the obligation initially, was your existing contracts with all these people would end up being absorbed into the free 2,000, and we would end up enjoying the balance of whatever was left.
Well, the original outlay of 2,000 carts was going to go to anybody that currently has a cart, a recycling cart, that wants to take advantage of a new one for deployment in the city.
Well,
so as the resident would call us and tell us, here, we've got a cart, we want to get a new GFL recycling cart, we'd log it, deliver it, and either retrieve the old one, or if they wanted to keep it, they could keep it for some other purpose.
That's part of the equation. The other part of the equation was they were supposed to have been taken off of the rental package.
We will do that. We most certainly will do that.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, and that's my concern, is unless we have some actual numbers that we know we're pulling those people off of your rental roster, we don't really know how many people are getting the benefit of these 2,000 free carts.
Well, that's what we'll have the log. The log will tell us as we're deploying them, because we'll get an initial push, initial rush on this as we do them almost every community we do. We'll get them out there, we'll log them down, discontinue their account for rental purposes, deliver them a new one again.
So the only problem I've got with that means that the customer has to take an active role in contacting you to be able to be taken off of that rental log. So I thought that the obligation was you guys have the data, who you're charging. You would be the ones that would discern who was renting. They would have the ability, you can contact them. They can have the ability to either maintain their existing cart or pick up or have you deliver a new cart, but they'd be taken off of the rental roster then.
Well, we can certainly see what left we have that's being billed.
I'm not trying to give you a hard time.
No, I understand
but that was
what
the
you're
intention
saying.
of the language.
Whatever we get is a real number of being billed customers, we'll address them with initial setup. But again, I hate to say that I think a lot of those folks were not being billed and are not being billed during the transition.
Mr. Mayor?
Well,
I'd like to add something. So the instruction at the last meeting was, that if I can quote a phrase, was to get the city out of the cart business. So this is written in a way that it's on the owners, the residents, to get these carts and sign up and get the free one. That takes the city out of the cart business. When you want to ensure that somebody who is renting a cart and has a relationship with Duncan or GFL or Allied, that's putting the city back in the cart business, and that's something that I was under the understanding we did not want the city to be doing under this agreement.
I was hoping we wouldn't have to take an active role in this, that you guys know who gets billed on this contract.
We do, and the other thing that I failed to mention there is there's trash carts out there too that could be being rented as well, separately, same rate. It's going to be, there's other trash carts out you probably see in your neighborhoods, people that have a trash cart and a recycle cart. This strictly deals with recycle carts. So
correct.
There could be, we could be sending a bill to Sam Caremagno for a cart rental without real good information that we received. It could be a trash, it could be a recycle. So there's going to be a little shuffle in here to figure it out. But again, if they're renting a recycle cart, and hopefully this is televised, people see this, because if they're renting a recycle cart, all they have to do is call us, say, I'm Sam Caremagno, I want a new recycle cart, wipe out your rental fee, here comes the new cart.
All right, maybe we can put that on the website and stuff too, to try to inform people.
Yes.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything for Sam?
Yeah, just one thing.
Go ahead, Councilmember Richards.
How many carts do you estimate are out there for yard waste? I see people who have yard waste carts. They look about the same, but they're not.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, that's again, there's carts, that's the idea behind the standardization of a good solid recycle cart. You can see them a mile away, you know what they look like. There's people that use carts for yard waste and trash and recycle. So if they're not labeled properly, it's really tough. You have to stop at every house and look for them. I'm sure there are people using them for yard waste. The problem is they're very, very heavy. We don't have any yard waste trucks that are tipping carts, for instance. They become very, very heavy. You think what a 35-gallon can is full of yard waste is probably 60 pounds. These are 96-gallon cans. So they're probably upwards of 200, 300 pounds when they're full. It's almost physically impossible.
Well, if the property owner wants to shovel in all the chips from a stump grinding operation, yeah, that cart's going to be several hundred pounds.
Yes.
Okay, if he can even move it out to the street. But if he's going to do that kind of operation with a yard waste cart, it should be noted separately from recycling cans and bottles that he washes and puts them out, you know.
Yeah, yard waste carts, I can't think of any community in the Metro Detroit area that uses yard waste carts. They're either trash or recycle, because your yard waste varies, especially, I think you have a leaf collection program here, if I'm not mistaken, where most communities don't have that, and just the variance of the volume is crazy. So not many communities use a yard waste cart. Not any that I can think of.
Well, then we ought to recommend to the public that they buy their own cart for yard waste and make it sure it's a different color, and don't confuse it with the carts that you're in contract with us.
For purposes of handling containers for our people anyhow, normally 35-gallon container is the optimal size. It can still be emptied by hand. It's not overbearing and not too much.
I agree with you.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the amendment and extension of the solid waste, yard waste, recycling, collection, and disposal agreement between the City of South Lyon and GFL Environmental USA Incorporated as presented, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the same.
Second? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Thank you very much.
Motion
Appreciate
passes.
your help with that.
Thank you, folks. Good night.
Thanks for being here, Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Camago.
Old business number 4, consider tax abatement fee. Recommendation on this, approve a tax abatement application fee consistent with Public Act 198 of 1974 and require applicants to deposit funds into an amount set by council, and that costs associated with processing the application will be paid from the deposited funds, and any unused portion will be returned to the applicant.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Wilhelm.
I can try and address this. My concern is I did find through, and I was hopeful that Bob Donahue was here. I asked him to check in with some communities, and I don't seem to have that information at my fingertips, but I do know that Lyon Township requires a deposit of $4,000, and they work against that for actual costs. Novi they do have a fee, but it seems to be a 2-step fee process based on the district creation and the application, and then I think he also obtained some information from Northville.
Councilmember Kibble.
I was trying to read through, and the sample from Lyon Township, I have a feeling it was a double-sided print, so we've only got the odd number pieces in here. I'm surprised it was $4,000. That seems like an awful lot of buy-in labor that would end up being accounted for. But I do like the idea, and it doesn't seem as though how many times this has going to be trying to be capitalized on, I suppose, is pretty limited. But it does seem like if you had a $1,500 that you, as soon as somebody has to take money out of that, they have to replenish in kind.
That's not an unusual deposit
Yeah.
escrow concept.
Exactly. It seems like that would end up being a workable thing, and it's not too onerous on somebody making a submission.
The concern would be the statutory language that indicates that you can charge only one fee.
Question.
What, it's comprehensive at the conclusion?
So without getting too far afield, the argument might be if you say 15 deposit and you need more, that could be characterized as 2 fees rather than just an increase in deposit. I think there's arguments both ways, but that may be the concern. Better to shoot high than not high enough.
Councilmember Richards?
Tim, if you're explaining this and I understand what how you're going about it, you're recommending that we set a singular price or a singular amount of money for the first step of this for a tax abatement application fee? Okay, just go with a smaller number, you know. I mean, we're not trying to upstage anybody. If somebody wants a tax abatement, we'll look at it. Like Glenn said, it probably won't be used very often, but we could set, I would think, just for simplicity's sake, just set a fee at $500 and see what the overall, how it processes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
To be, to provide the council with information, I think Bob Donahue, if I recall, reported that some communities don't charge a fee.
Right.
And I did see in my research a range of fees. As far as I can tell, the types of expenses the city would expect to incur relate to publication of the public notice and staff and consultant time in evaluating the finance component of the application itself. Now, you're
And franking
using,
costs too, I mean, mailings and things.
correct, correct. I'm sorry, I can't provide you with much more context on this because I just don't get into this.
Well,
very
if
often.
we don't feel comfortable moving forward, we could push it down the road until Bob gets back, or we can hash this out.
That'd be prudent.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah, push it down the road.
I make a motion that we postpone this to the first meeting in April.
I'll second.
Bob will be back.
Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. New business number 1, consider approval of purchasing a heater for DPW building. The recommendation on this, staff is recommending using the Lakeside Service Company. They were the low bidder. There was one bidder lower, however, they did not provide details of their work and wanted 50% payment up front, which the city does not participate in. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to direct my questions to Mr. Bowman. Where is this coming out of the budget?
It's already been assigned, excuse me, sorry for my throat tonight.
That's okay.
It's already been tagged in the budget for this. We have a line item for it.
It does help, and I know you're new. It does help in the explanation of the topic to actually refer to the line item.
And I did that in one of the other ones.
Did you?
After I
Okay.
already did this one.
Okay,
Yes,
that's okay. I tend to be a little picky about the budget, so.
Okay.
And I know you can't, there's 7 people up here, that's just me. If it
No,
does.
I understand.
It does help when you're trying to stay on top of the budget to know exactly where that's coming out of the budget. And I'd also like to remind those that are new on council that when you get these bids in, please take the time to look at the contracts and make sure that you don't have any conflicts of interest with anyone related to these companies. I think it's always a good habit to get into is just take a cursory look and see if you know anybody that you do have a conflict, please disclose it, and it can always be dealt with.
I'll say something.
Councilmember Richards?
This afternoon, I called up the yard and talked to Ron Brock and asked him to come pick me up. I wanted to go over there and look at this. He did. He picked me up, and I went over and looked at this suspended furnace, okay, in the air. And I agree. It certainly needs replacing, and I could see a couple of violations myself. What little I know, I suppose. But it's $3,800 difference when I read through this and looked at it, and it's all the same unit. They're all bidding on the same thing. Mm-hmm. I don't see how they could do that, okay, or how that could be so spread out. And I asked him, if you were handling this bid, could you just say, hey, let's lower your bid $300 and we'll take it? He can't do that. Mm-hmm. He said he has to take the lower bid, okay, and make a recommendation to council. He can't do that. But in this situation, in a private practice, somebody would do that. You know, they'll take the middle bid instead of the lowest one, and just see if they'll make a deal. It's a bunch of stuff. It was out of code. It's easy to see. Okay. Good that you noticed it and put it on the agenda, really. But I'm puzzled at how it's a Heineken unit or Heineken unit that's there, and how they could be so far out of line, so far $3,800 difference from the lowest bid. Puzzles me. I don't understand.
Well, a lot of times it's the labor. You know, I've been in the private sector before, and sometimes you'll pad the bill because you don't want the job, and if you get it, you'll take the time to do it. Yeah, other than that, I have no idea if that's just their labor charges or what, but it happens. We see that a lot, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Councilmember Friesian?
I see that there's a 1 annual performance tune-up for the first year, but after the first year, is there a warranty attached to this? Did any of the bidders offer a warranty?
Usually they have about a 1-year warranty on this stuff.
Okay.
That's typical.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Is the bid that you want Lakeside Service Company?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the purchase of a heater for the DPW garage as bidded by Lakeside Service Company in the amount of $5,561.27.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. New business number 2, consider approval of biotech contract. Recommendation on this agenda note, approve the contract.
If I could, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Typically, this is going to be considered an extension of what we already have from them. Basically, their contract went out of date. They agreed to keep the same price for another 3-year period. I just came out of the private sector, and I just dealt with 3 communities where I was trying to explain to them how their biosolids contracts were going up 10 to 40%. So when they told me that they would stay even for 3 more years, I think it's advantageous that the city jump on that and use that to save money as far as the next 3 years are going forward.
Thank you for your feedback on that.
Great idea.
Does anyone have anything?
I'll make a...
Go ahead.
I had a chance to go look at it, okay, with Mike and another friend and I went and looked at it also. I understand what they were talking about. I think it's a great deal, okay? But I think we all should remember, when we tally this whole thing up, we're talking about over $100,000 a year for this service. But I would like to ask you, Mike, one thing. On the tear, when they're loading that truck, do they go by the weight of the gallons? Okay? And if they do we have a meter checking the flow?
No, they go by gallons, and they go by our measurement when they take it out of the tanks. So we have a starting level and an ending level, and they have to match that.
Is there any way for them to cheat us?
There has been ways that they can do that. They'll tell you that there's 8,000 gallons of load, and in my previous experience, it's only about 7,200. So that's why, again, we go by measurements out of our tank, and we have, say, 500,000 gallons in the tank, and that's all they can haul, and they tell me they got 600,000, then they got a problem on their hands, because I'm going to be talking to them.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clear that because if we're just hooking up to a gigantic tank this is bigger than this room.
No, we have measurements that measure by inch how much is taken out of that.
Oh, okay, all right.
Do you try to send them out with a full load then?
Yes, they do that. They put as much as they can on the truck because it's to their advantage to get as much out as they can each load.
That makes sense.
Because they pay their drivers per load, so the drivers try to do the same thing as well.
Well, I'll make a motion that we support, or that we approve the contract extension with Biotech Ergonomics Incorporated.
I'll second.
Second, yeah, go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. New business number 3, consider approval of rehabilitation and pump overhaul of well number 2. The recommendation on this note, approval to proceed with well rehab. We have adequate funds available in the current budget under line item 592-556-931, building and equipment maintenance to have this work performed.
You want to pitch it?
I got
Go
a
right
question.
ahead.
Did you say you have a
I
question?
got a question, yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Richards?
Okay, Peerless Midwest is our steady provider with this type of technical service in most all of our well sites. Now, just let me recall something from memory here. Okay, I lived right next, more or less, to that pump station for a good many years, okay? Somewhere, talking to the guys and everything over the years, somewhere along the line, I remember saying that well was 165 feet deep, and it was topping off on the bedrock for the old prehistoric lake bed. Okay, the shale. Okay, and if this well, it's what it says in here. If it's not salvageable, even with dynamite and I can see the acid and all those chemicals, yeah, I would use every bit of it. But if you had to use explosives to try to rejuvenate this well and you can't get it, it's
We won't go that far.
no more water. Okay, you go $7,000 out of the total here, and you should be able to make a determination, okay, whether the well's dry or not, without going the rest of the way. That's all I'm saying.
They put a camera down there and they investigated it and found out that the screen that the water comes in is plugged off. That's why they will put the chemicals in there. It'll break all that iron and rust off of the screen.
Oh, sure it will.
And then it should do the trick. It's pretty common practice in the field.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I just wanted to ask you a quick question.
Sure.
The quotation is for a total not to exceed $39,670. That's the total?
That is what they told us. They said it would probably be underneath that, but again, he had to give me a ceiling that he wouldn't go above, and that's what we're going to make him stand to.
See where the quote is valid for 60 days.
Yep.
I move to approve the proceeding with the rehab work to well number 2 with Peerless Midwest, Inc., and the contract price not to exceed $39,670.
A second.
All in
Excuse
favor?
me, I'd like to ask a question. Do you happen to remember how much had been budgeted for that?
Yes, we budget $34,000 a year for that line item, and then we also have an $8,000 contingency fund that just in case this happens.
All right, thank you.
Motion on the floor.
It's been seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. New business number 4, appointment to the DDA. Ann Bertrip. I think this is way up here.
Absolutely.
Who is it?
I'll make the motion to approve appointment of Ann Bertrip to the DDA board.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Who is she? Is she here?
Yeah.
It's right there.
Oh, okay, all right.
Princess Wave.
Thank you and good luck.
Number 5, new business, appointment to the Ethics Commission, Angela Baker. Is Angela here? Okay. Well, this is good to see, though, because I know this is a place where we needed some volunteers.
I think I've seen that lady somewhere.
I'll make the motion to approve the appointment of Angela Baker to the ethics board.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
There is? Okay. Do we want to do a roll call on that? Lisa,
Yeah.
please? I'm sorry.
Yes.
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 No.
No.
Yes. Motion passes. We'll move on to number 6. Consider approval of use of volunteer park by Kiwanis for the egg scramble, or Easter egg scramble, I'm assuming that is?
Scrambled eggs.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Phil Weipert, 135 North Warren, South Lyon, Michigan.
Abraham Ayub, 417 South Lafayette.
We're here to ask Council's permission to use Volunteer Park for this Saturday, March 31st, annual Kiwanis Easter egg hunt. And it'll be from 11 to 2 with the scramble starting at noon.
The scramble started at noon, but the event will actually start at 11 with emergency personnel,
Right.
Easter bunny, photos, and then scramble will begin at noon sharp, one field at a time, so people don't have to leave their kids.
Gotcha.
Do you have a projection of the weather?
Beautiful.
Good. Good call.
Today was beautiful, but it sounds like rain every day, but we will come prepared, so.
Even if it rains, it's great.
Yeah.
It's always been good.
It's the rain in between now and Saturday, with the mud. So.
Right.
I'll make a motion to approve the request of Kiwanis Club South Lyon to use volunteer park for the Easter egg scramble on March 31st, 2018, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll see you this Saturday.
See you on Saturday.
Thanks for coming out, guys. Okay, so. Now, my
Plant Moran.
printout, is that, so Plant Moran will be
Yeah.
the number 8, or 7, excuse me? Okay. So this will be new business number 7. Approve revised Plant Moran engagement letter and amendum and authorize signature. Recommendation is to approve and authorize signature. Does anyone have anything on this?
No, this is what we've already wanted, and it's simply the formality of approving it. I'll make the motion to approve the revised Plant Moran engagement letter and addendum and authorize the clerk to sign it.
One moment.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Ms. Richards, you had something?
Mr. Mayor, I haven't seen this at all. I'm wondering, Tim, give us an opinion. Should I vote on this at all? It sounds like a pretty important issue, but I didn't get this till tonight.
This is largely cleanup. There were some changes to paragraphs 12 and 13 of the addendum regarding indemnity and limitation on damages. Because the interim city manager is out of town, we needed somebody to sign this in advance of Wednesday's budget session.
Did you get every word he said? I couldn't hear him.
Basically like a cleanup.
Okay, is it all right for me? Is it all right? Am I violating anything if I vote one way or another on this? Or should I just abstain? I don't, because I've never seen this. This is, okay, you expressed it explained it. Sounds like it's an okay deal to me, but I'm just letting you know, this is the first time it's brand new, you know.
Council has seen most of this agreement. There are some slight changes to 2 paragraphs. I have reviewed it. I find it acceptable, and most importantly, I need authorization for somebody other than Chief Collins to sign the agreement in advance of Wednesday. So.
Okay, fine, I pass.
Okay. We had a motion on the floor, but we did not have a second.
Okay, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. New business number 8 this evening. Memorandum of Understanding with POEM.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Council. So Pat Azeltine in my office has been working with the interim city manager and POAM to address the changes in the MERS retirement program for new hires for their union employee group. And they agreed to, I gotta say, I'm relying on Pat for this, but it's basically the same terms that were agreed to for the non-union group. And this has been ratified by them, by the POAM. So this is really just a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with POM as presented, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign it.
I was involved in that as well, and this is essentially language that was already in the existing contract that had been approved. So when the other unions had agreed to this, then they would fall in place with it. So with that, I'll make the motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with POAM as presented and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. With that, we'll move on to the budget this evening. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things on the budget. Just want to let everybody know, I'm sure everyone did what I did this weekend. We spent the whole weekend going through the budget line by line. I do want to thank Lori Mosier for staying tonight and working with me. I had a couple of other issues that I wanted sort of clarification, and she was absolutely wonderful in assisting. One thing I do want to bring to council's attention is that there is no plan in the budget right now with respect to reducing the unfunded pension liability. At this time, because there's no plan in there, I personally can't vote for the budget because the budget as presented pays bills, but it's not a forward-thinking document. And I think one of the things I just want to stress with council is that these budgets should be used as a planning tool, and that's how you get things that you want. You work these things into your budget. You solve problems through your budget. And this budget that I reviewed pays bills, but it does not solve some of the issues that have been raised over the past year or year and a half. One of the things regarding the pension liability is that council has some very limited options in terms of reducing that unfunded pension liability. I did speak with MERS last week and gained some additional information. I can talk about that at the workshop. But one of the things that I did want to bring to council tonight is that one of the ways to reduce that unfunded pension liability is to go back and reduce the multiplier that the city raised, I think it was in 2008. And they raised that multiplier to 2.5, which is as high as you can go. And part of the problem is that the city did not engage in funding the difference between what they had back in 2000 and what they were doing in 2008. So one way to attack the unfunded pension problem would be to go through the problem through the multiplier. If you go through the multiplier, then you wouldn't have to raise taxes and burden anybody in the city for what appears to be a huge mistake on the city's part in doing this raise up to 2.5. We can get a free ballpark quote. It takes about 21 days, and I would just like to ask council if there's a consensus here to have Lori, I do have the contact information, to have Lori contact MERS and request a ballpark of what the city would save if the multiplier was reduced from 2.5 to 2.0, and what the city would save if the multiplier was reduced from 2.5 to 1.8. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. If you do decide to reduce the multiplier in your discussions, then you would have to pay for a certified version of that calculation. But I think, I don't think we have all the options on the table on how that pension is going to be reduced over time, and personally, I'd like to take a look at a reduction in the multiplier, just because it's not going to cost the taxpayers anything. So I wanted to toss that out.
I just want to point out for council that reducing multiplier would be subject to bargaining with the
Yes.
unions.
It's the same, exactly. It's the same thing. Even though council would do it, the unions would have to agree to it. So that may be something that the unions won't agree to. Who knows? But I think you need that option on the table, and you need to understand what the savings are going to be for the city. I mean, it's difficult for me to approve a budget that increases taxes when we're not looking at all the options at how we can reduce that unfunded portion. So I'm just saying, take a look. It's not going to hurt.
I just want to point out that
Yes.
that's not something the city can do unilaterally.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
So is there interest in having Lori look at it?
I think we have to.
I think you would have to.
Yeah.
Okay, so can Lori watch the tape and I'll give her the information, so tomorrow she can do this? Because it takes 21 days to get it.
No,
Okay.
I think, I mean, is everyone, I mean.
Oh, well, I'd just like to point out that the bargaining units aren't going to entertain that.
Right.
So, I mean, what is the point of jumping through a bunch of hoops only to find out that we've just squandered people's time to turn around and not be able to get that passed by our bargaining units? I mean, that just seems pointless.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
Well, without some alternative, I mean, like Councilmember Kurtzwell said, nobody's made the discussion of how we're going to fund the unfunded balance right now. And she's requested that on numerous occasions. It seems to fall on deaf ears.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we going to do? Just, continue down the road?
So
Disregard
so
it.
you want to entertain this activity only to find out that they won't renegotiate, so then we're still looking for the real answer.
I guess the point is, if we don't have a plan on how we're going to fund the unfunded balance, that's the real issue. Okay, so I don't know why people aren't reacting to that. The request has been made. That request was made last December, okay, and nobody's reacting to it. I don't know what it takes for the city manager or the interim city manager to make that happen. I mean, they are his reports, not ours, okay? And I'd like to see that happen and be responsive to the request.
And really quickly, I just got a question to piggyback on that. You clearly said this doesn't going to cost us anything, so we'll just have, at least we'll have the numbers to look at. Glenn, I understand where you're coming from, because this has to get through the union. I think it's maybe just more of an informational thing to at least have on hand. I mean, am I not following you?
I think it could be a negotiation tool
Okay.
with the unions. To rule out that the unions won't negotiate that, I think that's pretty presumptive, when I would completely disagree with that.
Okay.
It's a tool, it's a bargaining tool, and you're not putting all the tools on the table, so how can you make a good decision, whether it's with the unions or whatever? This is about the taxpayers' money. This is about doing everything you can to protect that taxpayer's dollar.
Now, what is it that Lori is going to be doing?
She
Because
will
if
be-
you want to squander MERS's time in doing the research on this, that's one thing. If you're taking city resources to pile on information gathering and all that, that's a whole different story. Then it's not a free enterprise.
Anyway, the quote is free from MERS, so I'll talk with Lori. in the meeting. So it looks like there's consensus.
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to clarify, at least give you what I understand to be MERS's position. The unfunded liability is amortized and spread out over, I think at this point, you're down to 19 years. So they have an estimate of how much you have to pay over 19 years to get that down to zero.
Okay.
Now, whether you buy into that, that's actually going to happen or not is a different story. I just want to let you know what their position is, so that, I think there is at least MERS would say there is a plan to reduce that down to zero, but
Yep.
that's their position.
Well, we have $5 million unfunded because of certain assumptions they were making. So I'll give the information to Lori tomorrow. The next issue is, that I talked about with Lori, is on the payout vacation time schedule. This is just food for thought for council. Apparently Lori needs a direction from council as to whether she pays out this vacation payout. It's not just something that is going to naturally happen. So we do have some individuals that are on the payout schedule. And I thought that the whole point was to make sure that they get paid out this year, because the payout is based on their salary. So if you wait 5 years to pay the payout, you're paying the payout of their vacation time based on their salary 5 years from now, when the whole point of the payout of vacation time is to mitigate contingent liabilities and freeze it now. So just for thought, for council at the budget to make a decision as to whether we are going to request the payouts to be made this year. Additionally, I wanted to bring to council's attention that the budget, when I was looking at it, was trying to use it as a planning tool for the DPW possible rehab of the facility over there. And you can't really decide how to budget money for DPW in terms of what has to be done until you understand everything that is wrong over there at DPW. And at the last meeting, I thought that we were going to have Dennis go over to DPW and start a workup of everything that's wrong, from code violations, etc. When I spoke to Dennis on Friday, he had not been asked to do that yet. So I just want to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page. Is this something we want Dennis to do, is to get over to DPW and find out exactly what is wrong? Because I can't plan in a budget to fix things over at DPW unless it breaks down, and then you're coming here and trying to squeeze it into a budget. So I can't plan. And that's one of the issues I've had with the budget, is that I can't use it as a planning document because I don't know what needs to be fixed. And we won't know what needs to be fixed until Dennis gets over there and does a workup. So are we on that same page, or are we not? I mean,
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Parisian?
I guess my question is, I know Dennis would be the logical person to go to, but just a simple question as to why, Mike, you can't do it. Can you give us a write-up of what you need and what you want, your wish list,
Sure,
and then we
do
can
that.
go from there?
They've got some records of things that they've looked at in the past. I have, like talking about the driveway and everything, we've had, HRC has done many workups on that, or a couple workups on that, and some of the other things. Yeah, we can pull something together.
I would just see that, to me,
Maybe
I would
with
be,
assistance from Dennis as well.
can
if
you
he-
do code
right,
violations?
you can pair with him, or you can, I'm more inclined to look at what you actually want and need, because you're there more often. So that's why I would kind of like to know what you need.
Councilmember Kennedy?
I think it goes beyond that, because it's more than just what I want. It's a question of what are
What you
perhaps
need.
some of the existing code violations.
Violations,
Okay, that Mike may or may not be aware of.
Pair
Okay,
with
so
him. Pair with him.
These are some of the things that would have to be coupled with the things on his
Right.
wall.
It just-
Don't be mistaken, I'm not opposed to this idea at all. I'm just saying maybe pair with him. I'm not sure if Dennis would be the only sole person to do this. I'm saying that it's either you should pair with him, or if he wants to do it solo, that's fine as well. I'm not opposed to this at all. I'm just saying that I think it would be a good idea to have you guys work in tandem to get down a list of not what you want, but simply what you need, especially to get the place up to code. And that, honestly, I feel bad even saying that to you when I know the police department and the fire department have cracking foundations. I hate to say that, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done on all of our utility buildings.
Just on another budget item, over in the DPW facility, is it required that they have a decontamination when they're out there working in fecal matter?
It's not required, no.
Is there a way to clean off over there? Is there a special shower or room for them to use so that they can wash that sewage off of them before they go home or go into their lunchroom?
Besides using, typical hoses and stuff out in the garage, and not to my knowledge.
So you have all that contaminated material flushing wherever it is in the garage and floats around?
It could be, yeah.
Okay. I just want to let council know that I think tonight Novi may be voting on a new DPW facility. If so, I'm going to run over there and get that contract and see what it says.
Councilmember Kibble?
It seems like this is a good opportunity for us to actually make a list so that as far as budgeting considerations, we'll be able to prioritize things appropriately. So not everything has to be done overnight. It's a matter of just trying to schedule things with a level of importance, So, but chronicling everything that needs to be attended to is important. So, because not everything is equally important.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add for the budget?
Yeah, I've got something.
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
Okay, I went through that, I think 3 times, okay, studying the whole budget program. And there's too many little questions to ask right now. I would like a clear statement or understanding of what's going to be the topics in the first budget workshop tonight, so we'll know which ones to focus on for the first workshop. And then the second workshop, we'll have whatever's left over. And I got a question for Lisa, okay, because she would know. When in each page by page, there's lines that says interest income from bonds, forfeitures, penalties, assumingly money put in escrow. Now, roughly speaking, I didn't total them all up, but roughly speaking, you're talking about $10,000 or more, okay, just in the interest every year in all these little funds. Without a major budget amendment, okay, could council put this money towards local streets if they wanted to spend the interest money? Okay, since they're not touching a principal, could they spend that interest money from all those funds on local streets where we really need something to make an impact this year? It's you.
That's probably going to be an auditor question. I can't answer that question.
Okay, but that's just for the record.
Ask Plant Moran Wednesday.
I raised it because it appeared to me, okay, fine, said.
Thank you. All right, do you have something?
I have a manager's report question.
So with that, we'll move on to the manager's report.
Who is currently on vacation?
Yes.
Can I still ask? Just to ask? It's more for you, Mike. It's just a general, what's going on with the sewer system, the repair, how's that coming along? How are our residents doing? Have you talked to anybody in Colonial Acres? Any more backups? What's the status?
No more backups. We replaced that line. It was completed and back online last Tuesday about 3:30ish.
Awesome.
And the flow was excellent. That pipe used to run about a third to a half full. And what they found when they were digging it up is they found some dips in it, which was collecting and holding stuff. And now it's running right at the bottom of the pipe like it should. So the flow is going really well since we did that. So, and then the restoration work will happen. The DPW guys will put in the new sidewalk once the weather clears up a little bit. and then we'll get the restoration done as well.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
I got a question.
Could I ask you?
Go ahead.
Just a quick one. Would those dips and the constrained flow have contributed in the gas problem, eating away that concrete?
Yeah, because you get solids from the waste that sit in those depressions, and it causes an anaerobic condition, and gases can be caused from that.
Well, that's good. It should give us some more longevity at least.
Okay.
Councilmember Richards?
Mike, when I was out there one time, and I asked some of the workers, and I stayed out of their way, and they helped me back across the tracks because it was too dangerous. Okay, I asked them, has HRC showed up out here at least once or twice to inspect this job?
Not an emergency dig. They don't usually do that. No, at a planned situation where it's designed by them and everything. No, it wasn't designed by them, so they wouldn't be out there with a representative to inspect it.
Well, I remember distinctly that long before I was on council here, that we instructed them, or they agreed to run their camera through that line, okay, and inspect that line.
Well, they did do that, but it was a private company outside of HRC that did that work, and then they just monitored the videos once they were done.
Okay, what's your opinion of how the
I think it went real well. Ron Brock was on site almost every day to do inspections for us to make sure they were putting it in correctly. And the other thing that we make sure of is CI is a quality, outstanding company that we've used in the past before, and we're very reputable.
Oh yeah, good.
And that's a key. Those relationships with those people and understanding their work. And they don't want to be out here next week because it's the sewer failed. They want to come in and do a good job, and they do it right. And again, like I said, Ron Brock was out there almost every day, or one of our DPW guys was out there every day, monitoring what they were doing and making sure that they were meeting all the fall and everything was done correctly.
Did they check with the part of the line that goes under the tracks?
We didn't go that far.
But there's a juncture there somewhere where
Yes, there is.
You didn't go that far to
No,
that
we just
juncture?
went manhole to manhole before the tracks to in front of water's edge.
Okay, all right.
Yep, that was the only one in question.
All right, fine, thank you.
Mike, do you happen to know, is there an update on the rental properties?
Yes, the roof is completed.
Excellent.
Yep, I just saw that email come in today.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, if that'll do it for the manager's report this week, we'll move on to council comments. We'll start with Councilmember Kennedy today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This week I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the South Lyon Cable Commission and its volunteers who for many years have provided local television programming and, as they state, recording our way of life in South Lyon that reflects who we are as a community and creates a sense of pride and identity for our small Midwestern town. These efforts have helped capture and preserve events such as Memorial Day Parade, Memorial Service, the Cool Yule Parade, and tree lighting, the Veterans Day Ceremony, the Kiwanis Egg Roll Competition, the Pumpkin Fest Parade and activities, high school sporting events, War Dog Memorials, and various events at the Salem South Lyon District Library. So, again, I'd like to thank the Cable Commission and the efforts of their volunteers. And speaking of the Salem South Lyon District Library, I'd like to encourage our community residents to that they stop by the library and drop off their old newspapers, magazines, catalogs, mail, and other paper items at any time and recycle it in those large green and yellow bins in the library lot. The library realizes money from that effort and so far has earned close to $1,000 from that program. And while you're there, I'd like to encourage you to use your library card and get a Michigan Activity Pass that will provide you with discounts at a variety of attractions and venues, both local and across the state, including state parks, campgrounds, museums, etc., as well as discounted tickets for admission to the Detroit Zoo. So stop by the Salem South Lyon District Library, pick up your passes and tickets while you're dropping off your newspapers in their collection bin. It's a good deal for everyone. Thank you.
Great stuff, Steve. That's awesome. Councilmember Richards?
Okay, well, I stopped by the rental house, 464 Lafayette, just as the guys were wrapping up for the day, and talked to the tenant. He was there, Mr. Della Rosa, and he's very happy with what they're doing, and they did the garage first. The shingles, nobody paid any attention to the color, but it looks good. The wood was terrifically rotted underneath the half of the actual house. So it really needed, it's a miracle it hadn't all collapsed, okay, and caved in the meantime, okay, honest, you know. We let it go longer than most roofers see it. I don't know, and neither did he, about the electrical. We should probably inspect it, but it wasn't in this bid. Anyway, they're about wrapping it up. I was out there. It's a great job, and they're very neat. And I took the liberty to say, you guys can put up a bigger sign out by the road if you want to. So it's fine with me for their own advertising. Our superintendent Mike and I met the other weekend, and he was very helpful. Showed me things at the treatment plant, and we got a chance to talk. That's something that hasn't gone on with our previous, in the way I wanted it to. Okay, the sewer repairs wrapping up, and Walt Holden at the road building and the closing of the Draft Street, all topics of interest. Anyway, we've covered it all earlier in the meeting. So let me mention something about, can I go ahead?
No, you wanted to mention something about trees earlier.
Yeah, okay. My idea of interjecting an action item regarding tree trimming was we have an opportunity to save a lot of money, because I know what it costs, okay? All right. I talked to the Asplin guys, okay? They're the ones on the street right now, Liberty Street. They're going to be working here all week, not just on Liberty, but all these little streets, all the way down to Hagedorn, okay, on the side streets in this quadrant of town. And I asked them, can you do the trim out of a lot of the trees on the frontage? Because we've got over 100 dead out limbs, big ones, widowmakers, hanging some on the wires, okay, all on Liberty Street and on the surrounding spur streets, okay, Washington, and I live on Lenox, and we got Hagedorn down on the end. And he said to me, he said, we can't do it unless it's on the DTE wires. We're working in the middle of the block, in the middle of the lots, and we have to walk in from the street, and it all takes time, okay? So we'll be here a while. But it would take a separate, direct action by council to engage the company through DTE, I believe, to see if we could get a quote on it or by the day. I can personally tell you a 5-man crew with a private contractor is $1,200 a day minimum to break even, okay? And they're the most high-tech tree trimmers on the block, just so to speak, and they do a much neater job than Noromar, as far as the cleanup goes. So I was just going to bring that up and see if we get an action vote, but obviously I couldn't explain it. But I see it as an opportunity for the city to save a lot of money, okay, and to eliminate a terrific hazard, because these guys have got the best trucks and equipment and everything, and they're going to be right around here for a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Yep. Councilmember Friesian?
I have just a couple things. I'll keep it brief. The Chamber of Commerce awarded various awards throughout the city of South Lyon, Lyon Township, and I just thought I'd like to take a second to recognize some of the members of our community and our surrounding community and some of the businesses within our community as well. So the Lifetime Achievement Award went out to Chief Collins. That's a big deal. That's one of our very own. So congratulations to Chief Collins, because that's huge. I think he not only works hard with the police department, but he works hard with the city in all aspects. His hands are touching all the important things that go on and help the city turn, and I think it's important to recognize him, and he has been recognized with that Lifetime Achievement Award. So congratulations, Chief. It's well-deserved. Volunteer of the Year, Troy Powell. Again, another member of the community who does an excellent job with so many different aspects of festivals, festivities, etc. that go on. So congratulations, Troy, another person who should definitely be recognized and a well-deserved award. The Phoenix Award goes out to South Lyon Hotel. Again, one of our own gems in South Lyon. Congratulations, SL Hotel. Business of the Year, Martin's Hardware. Congratulations again. We should be recognizing our community businesses and we should be praising them. And it's we are lucky to have so many wonderful businesses within our community that make up the charm that is South Lyon. And on that note as well, I wanted to say that the Easter egg hunt is coming up on Saturday. Don't forget, it starts at 11 with activities. The Easter Bunny and police and fire will be there, so that'll be fun. But the actual hunt begins at 12, so the scramble is at noon. And lastly, I wanted to mention again, I think this is my third or fourth meeting in a row saying this, we need volunteers. We need you. If you are out in the community and you have some spare time and you're interested in what's going on in your local community, we need you on the Cable Commission, Parks and Rec. We need you on planning. We need you on ZBA. We need you on the Board of Ethics. You name it, we need you. So if you know of someone, spread the word. And also a special thank you to Annie and Angela, because you're taking the time to give back to the community, and we see that and we appreciate it. Thank you so much. We just need more people now. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Great reminder. Councilmember Walton.
Thank you. I just wanted to say congratulations to Ashley Parr on her Young Entrepreneur Award. I really can't wait to go into the Lemon Tree to see your work and maybe purchase some for myself. I also was going to remind everyone of the Easter egg hunt. I unfortunately don't have little ones anymore at home, but everyone that does really should get out there and enjoy it, especially with the great weather we're having. I want to thank Witch's Hat for their recent fundraiser for St. Jude, raising thousands of dollars, and also for the extra hard work to the South Lyon Police Department that day to keep the community safe, crossing the streets, the extra vehicles on the road. That was just a really great event, and you guys really kept it safe. So thank you again for all your extra efforts. And Mike, do you ever sleep? No. Because you're everywhere, and that's great. Just thank you very much for taking care of everything that you got going on. Happy Easter, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kibble.
I had received an email this afternoon. Somebody had given me notice that at the Knowles development that they're in their clear cutting, and they're cutting all the way back into the pond. It's up at the north end of that. I was hoping that Mr. Gotham or Dennis Smith or somebody could verify the footprint that's necessary. And you know, there's a catalog of trees that are supposed to end up being salvageable or protected, excuse me, and then you know, a whole host of trees that are just scrub and can be taken out. It'd be nice to have an understanding of which are which before things are cut down. So I'm just hoping like crazy that, you know, that we went through this at the onset of that development where they just went in and went hard and just cut everything in sight, and I'd like to avoid us having that same circumstance. So that's really all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I wanted to do is spend a couple minutes addressing a comment that was suggested by our Economic Development Director at the last meeting, and that appeared to be that he was attempting to curb people's opinions and criticisms and critiques of the downtown area, which what I say to him is me and everybody else who avidly believes in the First Amendment are going to continue to do. I would like to remind our Economic Development Director that he owes his job, his $60,000 plus income, and his 3% raise that he got in January to the First Amendment. He owes it to free speech. Many of us have been extremely critical, and I mean extremely critical, of the city's mismanagement of the downtown over the past 2.5 decades. The city failed to invest in the downtown, failed to provide the resources to support the downtown, failed to promote the downtown. The city allowed the downtown to deteriorate to its lowest point in about 2013, 2014, when I believe the vacancy rate was close to 55, 60%. I also recall saying to the newspaper in 2015 that the downtown was nothing but a dust bowl. And I criticized the city for its failure to develop and to compete with the surrounding communities for a vibrant and attractive downtown. All of this was free speech. All of this was the First Amendment, and it was unrestricted by the hands of government. Finally, in 2016, council, many members who sat here for close to a decade and watched the downtown decline, finally realized that the day-to-day operations of the city manager did not leave room for economic development. So the discussions began and the decision was made to hire the city's first economic development director. Most cities had already done this. South Lyon was that far behind the pack. All the battles, all the voices from the residents in the subdivisions, all the negative posts on Facebook, the critics in the surrounding communities finally resulted in Robert Donahue's hiring. It was the citizens that were exercising their First Amendment right that Mr. Donahue owes his job. Years of silence, as now being suggested by Mr. Donahue, or at least curbing criticism, left that downtown in shambles with no life, no hope of economic vitality, buildings in disrepair, and the interior of stores and businesses outdated and dilapidated. No, thank you, Mr. Donahue. I will not go back to the days of silence, because I have seen the devastating effects on the downtown when no one is complaining, when no one is criticizing, and no one is holding city officials like yourself accountable for the development in that downtown. I think Mr. Donahue needs to read the First Amendment. That First Amendment does not protect the speech that you like, the speech that you prefer, the speech that you want, or the speech that serves your agenda. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution protects speech that you don't want to hear, speech that offends you, and speech that you do not want the public to hear. So if anyone, including me, wants to comment on anything related to anything, even if it pertains to the downtown, you're going to hear my voice, Mr. Donahue, whether you like it or not. I will continue to speak out on matters in the downtown because it is more of free speech. It is more of the comments and the criticisms that has moved that downtown forward more than anything you have done to date. So, Mr. Donahue, I just say that, you know, respect is what it is. It takes time to gain people's respect, but it takes much more time to get it back when you've lost it. So that's my comment on the Downtown Development Authority. Next, I am going to renew my voice, renew my suggestion that council consider hiring a professional interim city manager. Burnout is a very, very real thing. It happens. And once again, I think it's important to know that we have a interim city manager who is burning the candle at both ends. He is holding the balls up in the air over here so that they don't fall on the ground, and he's also trying to hold down a department over there in the police department. So you have somebody who is trying to do the right thing, and I think council needs to do the right thing. And they need to understand that burnout is a real issue. If Mr. Collins burns out, which I'm sure he won't, but if he does, we will lose an interim city manager, and we will lose a department head with the police department. Additionally, by having this arrangement, we are also putting stress over in the police department, because now you have individuals over there that now have to work overtime and make up for the absence. I sat down and calculated the time that we are losing in terms of management. If you look at about a 30-hour week, and if you look at that is roughly on the average, when I looked at payroll as to what Mr. Collins was taking or making, rightly deserving it, it's about averaging about 30 hours a week. A city manager really needs to be in this office about 48 hours a week. Since January, we have lost over 1,000 hours of management to the city, and believe me, the cracks are definitely showing. It's not Mr. Collins' fault. It's the circumstances that he is in. I think we are probably more beneficial to have him in the department for the next 5 to 10 years than we are to sit here and burn him out. It's going to take you 60, 90 days to find an interim city manager, so what are you going to do? Are you going to have him work another 90 days, 2 jobs, and put the South Lyon Police Department under continuing stress because they're now working? To me, it's a management decision, and it's easy to make. Additionally, I wanted to bring to council's attention who's in charge. Who's in charge? We have a interim city manager who is on vacation, which he rightfully needs to take or should take. That's not the issue. The issue is who is in charge now that he is gone.
Well, I'm sure he's available by phone, so.
I never got an email.
Mr. Mayor, he is available by phone and email, instead of text sending emails.
Okay, that is one of the issues regarding having someone who is not professionally trained to be a city manager. I spoke with 2 individuals in cities other than South Lyon today, and the reporting should have gone out to everybody. It's just common knowledge. If you're not going to be here, say you're not going to be here, and say I am available to do this or that. It's not his fault. I mean, these things are slipping through the crack. It's very important for staff and employees to know that he's still available by phone. This is the first time I've heard this, and he's been gone since last week. Totally inappropriate. But anyway, it is what it is. Next, I would like to thank Carl Richards for his honest disclosure of a conflict of interest that he had on a matter during a prior meeting. Mr. Richards, who is not a seasoned council member and only being on council for about 5 months, he did the right thing. He had a basic instinct about what honesty is. He saw a conflict, he disclosed it, and I think this speaks volumes of his character and integrity. So thank you, Mr. Richards, for your honesty. We don't necessarily have that all the time here on City Council, and you definitely saved us $38,000 because we didn't have to research anything. So thank you, Mr. Richards. Last, I'd like to thank Peter's True Value for their parking lot marker that designates a parking lot for our great veterans. Thank you, Peter's True Value. You're right here in the city of South Lyon. Please shop local. And thank you for your commitment to veterans. And good night, everyone. Have a great Easter, and we'll see you at the next City Council meeting.
I don't really have anything, so we will look to go into a closed session.
After recess?
You know what? Yeah.
It's a great idea.
I move to recess for 5 minutes.
Do we got a second? Thank you. 5-minute recess, and then we will return for closed session.
Okay.